shortly after President Hinckley became president of the church, and even before he was president of the church, I think President Hunter and he had decided that he would come up here to a regional meeting. And so in 1995, he came ahead even though he had become president of the church, and they were going to hold a regional meeting in Anchorage. I was fortunate enough to go up to that regional meeting, and when we were in that regional meeting, I think there were about, at the Sullivan Arena, it seems like there were maybe 10 or 12,000 members of the church there in Anchorage that came to that. Earlier there was a leadership meeting of both the Relief Society and priesthood, and there probably were a group of maybe 70 of us there at that meeting. I was the district president representing Juneau, and the question was asked of President Hinckley, when will we have the opportunity to have a temple? And he said, well, when you double your baptisms, we'll look at that. A few days later, he just came back down to Juneau. I think it was on June the 18th of 1995. He was very tired because he'd held a number of meetings in Anchorage, and I went to the airport to pick him up, and I drove him down to the stake center, which was really not a stake center then. It was at our district meeting. We had, I believe, 800 people who had come to see President Hinckley. It was interesting as he began to speak. You remember when he would speak, sometimes he'd kind of get a little choke in his voice, and then the Spirit would come upon him and he'd become very energized. Well, after that meeting, we drove him back to our little hotel, and he became quite conversant. And he said he wanted to know about the area, why we were still a district, and I told him we had been applied 3 times to become a stake, and we'd been turned down because of our geography, where we took in Canada and so forth. And over that period of time, he was very inquisitive about what this area was like, what Alaska was like. Kind of an interesting, funny story is he was going to go out on a boat that a fellow from St. George had by the name of Jimmy Rosenbrook. And he said, I remember standing out in front of this little room we have at our inn called Grandma's, and he was standing on the step, and he was looking down at me, and he said, President Perkins, he said, I feel like I'm sinning. I said, what do you mean, President Hinckley? He said, I'm going out on that boat for 3 days. And Richard, his son, said that he had never done anything like that. And but I think it allowed him to think and analyze and to consider this whole area of Alaska that he had seen. Well, we actually took all their clothes and took them to our house and put them in a little guest closet. I remember my wife saying, honey, I feel like I have my arms around the prophet, because she was carrying his suit coat. Well, when we hung up his suit coat, he had a map of Alaska in his vest pocket. So he was thinking about all of these things. Well, I remember going to General Conference and being in the priesthood session 2 years later in 1997, when he said, we're going to announce small temples and bring them to the saints. We're going to have one in Monticello, Utah, Colonial Juarez, Mexico, and Anchorage, Alaska. And I heard later that the saints in Anchorage, the brethren in Anchorage, let up a huge cheer